Now to Ukraine, and Russia has ordered its troops to withdraw from the western bank of the Dnipro River near Kherson. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu ordered the retreat after weeks of Ukrainian gains in the area. Russian commanders say it is no longer possible to deliver supplies to the city. And it says that troops will pull back to defend the eastern side of the river. Kherson is the largest city captured by Russia since the war began, and the withdrawal would mark a major setback for the Kremlin. For more, we're joined by our correspondent Nick Connolly in Kiev. Nick, what do you make of this Russian announcement? Can it be believed?
I mean, this is certainly a big deal if it turns out to be true. There's obviously a lot of skepticism here in Kiev, fears of a trap and an attempt to somehow get the Ukrainian forces to basically head into Kherson and then, face serious resistance. There have been talk in recent days of very high-level, very highly trained, well-resourced Russian troops being in Kherson, changing into civilian clothes and basically waiting for the Ukrainians to come in. But it does seem like the Ukrainian tactic of consistent attacks on the infrastructure, on the bridges, on all the kind of pontoon bridges, all the attempts to bring in supplies for that Russian garrison there has now finally achieved something. It has become basically impossible for the Russians to resupply their troops west of the Dnipro River, which is a very, very wide river at its widest point there, and basically, the dividing line between those Russian troops there and their kind of hinterland and all the supplies. So certainly a lot of cautious optimism here in Kiev, but a lot of suspicion and a lot of fear of a trap.
If this withdrawal is actually happening, Nick, what does it tell us about where this war might be heading?
Well, this obviously was the part of Ukraine that all observers have been looking at since the summer. In the summer, we were told that the Ukrainians would head for Kherson and that would be their priority. It ended up coming differently. Back then, it was more a kind of diversion tactic, seemingly from the Ukrainian side. But it does show that these Ukrainian tactics are working, that Ukraine's patience at depriving Russian troops of their supplies is working, even though it maybe doesn't bring success as quickly as lots of people here in Kiev would want. And it also shows that Russia is basically not able to do anything. It's not able to respond to this strategy, that it isn't able to suddenly, kind of deal with these logistical hurdles in the way everyone thought it would, that it is overstretched and that maybe it bit off more than it can chew. I think the symbolism is really difficult to kind of overstate here. This is the only regional capital that Russia has picked up in this entire war. It is, the first major city that it picked up back in early March, and it's going to be very, very difficult, especially after the annexation, after Russia claimed Kherson was now part of Russia, for the Russian leadership to explain this to ordinary Russians.
As you say, there's still quite a bit of suspicion. We have to see if the withdrawal is actually happening. But again, if it is happening, what does this mean for Russian President Vladimir Putin?
Well, it's a very, very kind of painful blow. We've already seen him trying to spread the blame. He made one of his top generals, or the top general in charge of the Ukrainian war, Surovikin, come out and basically suggest this to the leadership. Then it was Sergei Shoigu, the defense minister, who now came up with this order. So basically this is all about making sure the optics, that all the kind of bad news comes out of other people's mouths and not out of Vladimir Putin's mouth. Similarly with mobilization, this is all being delegated to the regions, and the regional governors are having to kind of take the unpopular decisions and ask people to send their sons to the front lines here in Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin only kind of drops in when there's something good to report, a success, and basically trying to kind of disconnect his brand from this war in Ukraine that obviously he seemingly thought was going to be a big success, an easy win, and something that would stabilize his regime. Him trying as much as he can to basically put as much distance between himself and all this kind of endless bad news coming out of Ukraine.
Nick, thanks again. Our correspondent Nick Connolly in Kiev.